I stopped being goth slash metalhead slash dark alternative in my early 20s. If you've been here for a while, you already know how I grew up goth and metalhead and dark alternative. If not, you can watch that video here. But I used to have a pretty substantial band t-shirt slash merch collection, which sadly I have like one remaining thing, which is a pin, and it's very sad that everything else is gone. And that is because I stopped being goth slash metalhead slash dark alternative in my early 20s, and I'm gonna tell you why. So everything that I have right now, all my band shirts, is what's been rebuilt basically since 2016, since I kind of started slowly getting back into things. Actually, I have like maybe one or two items that are a little bit older than that. That said, I had so many band t-shirts. I had like, I can't even tell you how many Slipknot shirts, Korn shirts, because those were like the first two bands that I got into, Cradle of Filth, Marilyn Manson, Kitty. I had a really awesome Kitty shirt from the first metal concert that I ever went to. Oh, such a good memory, such a good time. And it was after their Oracle album, so it wasn't just new metal, it was like heavier stuff. And it was an awesome shirt, and it had the tour dates on it, and that went away with everything else. My Slaughterbox shirt, my Sisters of Mercy shirts, my handmade, self-made Switchblade Symphony shirt, just like every shirt that I ever had, and pretty much any like article of band merch that I ever had was given away. So, long story short, when I was about 21, I gave away all of my band merch to a good friend of mine who was super into collecting band shirts and band merch. Like, his collection was like insane. I mean, my collection was pretty decent, but his collection was like massive, right? When I decided I was gonna give all my merch away, I was like, let me give it to Josh, because like, you know, he's a collector. He will probably just like appreciate having these items, whether they'll fit him or not. The reason I decided to give all my stuff away was around the age of 21, I started feeling like I was too old to be dark alternative. I was getting a lot of comments and criticisms for being into goth and dark alternative, or at least dressing that way. There was two main reasons why I stopped dressing in dark alternative and wearing band shirts and kind of being more into the goth and metal scene. First reason is that in my early 20s, I was really focused on politics, community organizing, leftist, social justice, nonprofit things. Like, that was my main thing. I identified as an organizer above everything and anything else. And in my time organizing, I was doing a lot of racial justice work. I would always get the comment a lot, and I'm not the only one who's experienced this. Ask any like goth of color, and I use that loosely for myself because I know I'm very light-skinned, but I am half Mexican, half white. But like, ask anyone from your own communities. I've heard this so many times from black goths and black metalheads and Mexican goths and Mexican metalheads, although there is a really big presence of metal and goth and dark alternative scenes in Mexican communities, but even so, those who are not within the scene will typically say stuff like,
"That's some white people shit."
ask any like person of color that you know who's into like dark alternative scenes. A lot of them have had this comment from people within their own communities. While I was doing this social justice organizing work and hearing comments like that, "That's some white people shit," and me already being half white, half Mexican, and feeling very much like I need to not like be more relatable, but like I just didn't want to be ostracized from the communities that I was like working with, or like give anyone a reason to see me as more of an outsider, if that makes sense. And all of this was very subconscious. It's not like I consciously thought this through. It's just things that I was like subconsciously feeling that I've since consciously thought about. But I also started developing this kind of like shame around goth and metal and dark alternative because of that. I started listening to, I've always listened to like hip hop and R&B before I got into metal. My favorite radio station was Power 102, which is our local which is our local hip hop and R&B station. So that was like what I was into before I got into like dark alternative stuff. And I never like hated it. I was never one of those people who was like, "Ooh, ew, hip hop." I always liked it. Like, nu metal was the first genre I was super into. I was still listening to like, all the stuff that was playing on that radio station, all the R&B stuff, like Destiny's Child and like 112. Peaches and Cream was like one of my favorite songs in like 6th grade. You know what I mean? Peaches and Cream. You know, so point is, I never stopped listening to hip hop and R&B. It just wasn't like one of my predominant genres. For a long period of time, it was mostly just like goth metal, new metal, and other like adjacent genres. But once I started feeling this like shame, I really kind of started listening more to reggaeton, which I liked already. It's not like, oh, I just started listening to it because I'm trying to like fit this mold. I already liked it, but I just kind of like started listening to that more. Cumbia, which like is still a huge genre. I already liked it, but I just kind of like amplified how much I was listening to those genres and like downplayed like how much I was listening to like goth and metal. I also started listening to more mainstream stuff because a lot of the people I was organizing with were listening to that. Like people were like obsessed with Beyonce, people were like obsessed with Drake, and I didn't have a problem with it. Like I liked the music, so I just like actively started listening to that more. Like there was a period of time where like my most listened to artists were like 2 Chainz, Drake, Nicki Minaj, and Beyonce. And that was probably like in 2014 and 2013. I was also really into post-rock at the time, which was like a little bit more mellow. I was really into like Mastodon and Mogwai and Animals as Leaders. I was like into more kind of mellow stuff where people kind of look normal. And yet I still went to a lot of those shows alone. So even Mastodon and Gojira and Mogwai, which are like a lot more mellow, I went to those shows by myself because I didn't have anyone to go with, because at the time I wasn't like hanging out with or in community with people who were listening to that music. So that's one reason why I kind of stopped listening to that music. I did get shamed for it a lot, to be honest, in different ways. And I once was told that metal was a soulless, a soulless genre of music, which I completely disagree with. But at the time, you know, I just felt like a lot of shame about it, and that is one of the reasons I stopped and gave away all of my merch, because I just felt like, oh, this isn't who I am anymore, you know? And then the other reason is I felt like I was too old for it. Like, growing up, I had a lot of friends who were into it. I had a lot of community who was into it. And I think I just didn't, like, keep in touch with that community. Slowly, I started hanging out more with, like, organizers and people in, like, the social justice movements. I was going to, like, a lot of poetry slam nights. I was performing slam poetry.
My favorite poet today is Sonia Renee. She's amazing. If you haven't heard of her, look her up. She has this thing where she makes you look inside yourself and see what binds you, like what holds you and keeps you from being really free. This poem is about that, and it's called My Ruckus.
So, like, I didn't even like really think about it. I kind of was a hipster at one point, and like stereotypical to the T. My community that I hung out with was like less and less dark alternative goth and metalhead people, and more like these like leftist social justice, like poetry loving people. And so I just felt like, okay, I didn't really have like a good community or like role models on like how to kind of transform. Because like, listen, I'm not sitting here being 30 years old wearing trip pants. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I didn't really have a way to transform within being a dark alternative person. I didn't have like a good role model for what that looked like. So I just kind of like cut everything off. That said, my love for the music never fully went away. I mean, I would still listen to metal sometimes, I still listen to goth sometimes, but it just wasn't the same as like being enmeshed in a community and having friends who are into the same thing. You're kind of just like a lone wolf, and then that kind of gets buried because you're trying to fit in with like these other aspects of your life, you know what I mean? So for those reasons, I gave all my merch away to a friend because I thought, this isn't me anymore. And to be fair, even if I had those shirts to this day, they would not fit me because I've gained a lot of weight since then. But also a lot of those bands that I was really into back then, I wouldn't be representing I wouldn't be like wearing their shirts today. I think it would be nice to have as kind of like nostalgic relics of the past, but I don't think I can't see myself walking around wearing a Slipknot shirt in this day and age, which is so weird because I used to be such a huge fan. Like, I used to be obsessed with them. Like, I lived and breathed Slipknot for like 10 years, but I really can't see myself wearing a Slipknot shirt in this day and age. It's just, that's not me right now. But that said, there are shirts that I had that I probably would still wear, particularly my Slatterbox shirt, my Sisters of Mercy shirt. Like, those are two that if I could pick two from the past, I would pick those. I really wish I had those still. All that said, that is why I stopped being dark alternative, goth, and metal for a while, and I started getting back into it in my late 20s, really more so once I hit 30. I realized you're not too old, and you can be whoever the hell you want to be and like whatever the hell you want, regardless of what your identity is or what other people think you should be, or what other communities you get involved with. Like, why couldn't I have been a, dark alternative, goth loving metalhead who did all of the things that I was doing, you know what I mean? But like I said, I was getting a lot of comments, being shamed for it, and I just didn't have any good examples of what it looked like to like evolve into older age while being into dark alternative at the time. So yeah, that's kind of it. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.